Understanding the human brain makes marketing so much easier. But the real question is, what is marketing? Well, if you think about marketing in practice, really all you're doing is just getting people to take action one way or another, usually to buy a product or service. And people only take action because of something happening in their brain. So every single marketing principle is, at a higher level, a principle of the human mind. And I'm 100% confident that if you understand marketing in this way, you will have an unfair advantage because it doesn't matter what channel or what medium of marketing you're using. If you want to get more leads from social media, if you want to have a higher conversion rate on your website, or if you want to get a better return on paid ads, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if the channels of marketing change in the future. You will literally always be able to work backwards from the first principles of the human brain. So in this video, I'm going to teach you 5 principles or facts of the human brain that will make marketing easier for you. Principle number 1 is that the brain uses the most calories of any organ in the human body. And the reason that this is important is because your body is actually designed to save as much energy as it possibly can. You evolved during a time when food was incredibly scarce and starving was the biggest threat to your existence on a daily basis. And so everything in your body, all the systems of your body are really designed to save as much energy as they possibly can. The brain, despite only being 2% of the body's total weight, burns 20% of your daily fuel. Okay, and let's think about this. If your body wants to save as much energy as possible, and if your brain uses the most energy of any organ in the body, then it makes sense that people do not want to use their brain. People have a general aversion to using their brain, which actually explains a lot about society if you think about it. But regardless of that, people don't like to use their brain, and those people include your potential customers. And so the takeaway here is that if your marketing is harder to understand than it needs to be at all, you are making less money than you could be right now. You're asking your potential customers to use their body's most valuable resource to understand your ads, which they probably don't care that much about, if we're being real. It would be like flying a massive jumbo jet with 2 turbine engines just to go 10 miles. The trip is not worth the fuel. The words that you choose in particular are the number one most important thing that decides if your marketing is good or not. An important statistic that you have to keep in mind is that 50% at least of the American population cannot read above a 6th grade reading level. So a lot of you guys are asking your customers to do something they don't want to do, which is to use their mental energy, right? But a lot of you guys are also asking your customers to do something they straight up cannot do, which is to read words above the level they understand. So the 2 most important like tactical things that you can garner from this are, number 1, keep your language simple, and number 2 is avoid jargon. Now, what does this word mean? Jargon is a very interesting word to me because it's autological, meaning that it describes itself. And so jargon is a form of jargon. And so jargon basically happens when you bundle a bunch of words together in a way that other people cannot understand. And so let me show you a quick example of this. Try to read the sentence on the screen right now and combine it into one word. A yellow car where you give the driver money and they drive you around the city. Okay. Hopefully this was relatively easy, but this is it's a taxi. This is easy for you to understand. This is also probably easy for you to understand. But if someone doesn't know what the word taxi means and you try to use it in a sentence, they're not going to understand the meaning of the sentence. And to them, the word taxi is literally a form of jargon. So jargon is mostly about your perspective, actually. And so that was maybe a bit of a bad example because it's not like, I think a vast majority of people know what the word taxi means. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you bundle together other words like this, and other people who are less sophisticated in your particular area, they cannot understand you. And so you need to like break down your language just like this, where you would say a yellow car where you give the driver money and they drive you around the city. Even if someone doesn't know what the word taxi means, you can explain that to them in like broken down words. A lot of the times when you're doing marketing on your website, on your social media posts, on your ads, whatever, you need to break down your language like this so it's super duper simplistic for people to understand. It's really important to do that. The dangerous part about this is that it's really, really easy for you to understand what I just said. Like, that's a super simple concept. Okay, I need to keep my language simple. I need to avoid jargon. That's really, really easy to learn. But the thing is, applying this in the real world is not that easy. So, what does it actually look like to apply this? It literally looks like going on your website and going over every single word that you have on there, sometimes for hours at a time, and making sure that the language is as simple as possible and it's very easy for people to understand. And you literally have to go through word by word and make sure that it's good. And it might look like doing the exact same thing for your social media posts. Okay, principle number 2 is that the human brain's working memory is extremely limited. And so working memory is basically your brain's ability to hold on to information in the moment. So if I tell you the word umbrella and then I wait, and then I ask you what word I just said, you just used your working memory to remember that word. So it's like super duper short term memory. If you've ever tried one of those tests where it's a string of numbers and you have to memorize as many numbers as you can in a sequence, and then you have to repeat it back after the numbers disappear, it's really, really hard to go past 9 or 10 numbers. It gets really difficult to remember all that information. And so your working memory is very, very weak. It's much weaker than your long term memory. It cannot hold on to that much information. And the reason that this is such an important principle for marketing for the human brain is because I see a lot of local business owners who are like, it's like you're trying to give your customer all this information, like, oh, look at this benefit here, and this benefit here, and this cool thing here, and this thing here, and this over here, and it's all this information. And the thing is, when you advertise your products and your services in this way, you're asking your customers to do something that they cannot do. They cannot hold on to all of that information at the same time, and it ends up making the whole marketing message weaker, and it just gets diluted, and they don't really hold on to any tangible benefits because it's like all this information. What you really want to do, instead of having, all of these scattered benefits, you want your marketing to be more like, here's one really, really big benefit, and then here's, 10 tiny little reasons why it'll work. And then, like, all of them feed into that one large benefit, right? And that way, you basically guarantee that your customers have one really strong takeaway instead of, a bunch of diluted like information that they can't grasp. Okay, principle number 3 is that the brain can only learn new things by comparing it to what it already knows. This is why understanding, if you've heard of market sophistication or market maturity, that can be very important. Basically, like, to the people you're advertising to, what do they know? What do they not know about your particular business? What do they already believe about it? So, for example, imagine you owned a med spa, which is a skincare business, and you're trying to advertise to 100 people. Okay, and now imagine those same 100 people all have been to a med spa before, and they all had a terrible skin reaction that left them with hives all over their face for the next 2 weeks. Suddenly, you have a very, very different job because anytime they hear about a med spa, they're going to be comparing that to the existing information in their brain about what a med spa is, which is dangerous. Notice, by the way, I'm not focused on like, what do I want my customers to hear about my business? I'm focused on what do my customers know and what do my customers care about? And I'm working backwards from that. That's kind of the mindset that you want to be in a vast majority of the time when you're doing advertising. This same principle of the brain comparing information to what it already understands about a thing is also why hooks and like headlines and like the first encounter of a piece of media is always so important. So like the hook of an Instagram reel, it gets people to watch, right? Because the first 3 seconds grab their attention, but the hook also changes the way they see the rest of the video. Because when they're watching the rest of the video, they're comparing it in their brain to what the first 3 seconds were. So it sort of frames the experience. And so it's like long term, the first time someone encounters your business, that moment is what they will compare the rest of their learning about your business to. But in the short term, your content and your media and your advertising, in the first moment they encounter a given piece of marketing or like a given piece of like a social media post, the hook or the headline or the first thing that they hear frames the rest of it of the experience in their brain because they're comparing the rest of the video to the first part of the video, if that makes sense. And so it doesn't just get more people to watch, it also changes how they see and perceive the rest of the video. Principle number 4 is that the human brain is a pattern recognition machine. This is one I personally think about a lot. Your brain is very, very good at generalizing patterns, right? I can show you this image of the Golden Gate Bridge, and I can also draw the letter U, and you can kind of see the same shape, right? So your brain can basically take one pattern and match it across a bunch of different things. When your brain starts to notice a pattern in a given thing, you start to get bored of it, right? When something becomes too predictable, it starts to get boring, right? But when something interrupts that pattern, it suddenly grabs your brain's attention. And this is important to know because if you want your marketing to stand out, you need some degree of pattern interruption in your marketing. You basically need to interrupt people's everyday patterns in some way. Otherwise, your content will just blend in. And this is particularly important in social media. They're comparing your content to other pieces of content in the same medium. So it's not like they're pattern matching just your content. It's like if you upload an Instagram reel, they're comparing it to the 10,000 other Instagram reels they've already seen, right? If you upload a YouTube video, they're comparing it to all the other YouTube videos that they've ever seen. I think graphic design is so underrated. People do not put enough effort into the visual elements of their business, in my opinion. And there are different types of pattern interrupts, right? There can be a logical pattern interrupt. There can be like a verbal or text-based pattern interrupt, but there's also visual pattern interrupts, which I think can be really, really powerful if you use them in the right way for social media content in particular. Principle number 5 is that the brain is self-interested. And this is basically a fancy way of saying that people are selfish. I felt like I had to bring this up in this video because I feel like the number one problem that I see in local business owners marketing is that you are focusing on things that your customers do not care about. And here's the thing, your customers are selfish, just like I am, just like everybody is. They care about your business. They do not care about your brand. They do not care about your mission. They do not care about your values. They do not care about the founder. They do not care about any of this stuff. The only thing they care about, literally, is what changes in their life as a result of using your business. So if you're doing marketing and you're trying to figure out what do I want to talk about in my marketing, you want to focus on the material and the emotional changes that happen in their life as a result of using your business. So material means the actual physical changes that happen in their life, in their real world. Like, I don't know, getting a new car is an example of a material change. Having nicer skin is an example of a material change. The emotional aspect is how their internal experience of the world changes as a result of that physical change or as a result of using your business, right? So you get a new car, that's a physical change, but you feel higher status, you feel like a badass, whatever, because you have a new car. That's an emotional change, right? That's internal. You have nicer skin, that's a material change, but you feel more confident in yourself. That's an emotional change. And so you focus on those two categories of change in their life, and you basically try to add legitimacy to that. And don't talk about things that your customers do not care about. Because, like, the thing that you have to understand is that every single thing that you add to your marketing material that is not focused on the benefits of the customer, it doesn't just exist in neutrality. It takes away from the good part. It's sort of like if you have like a pool of drinking water that a city uses, and it's like, let's just imagine like a big pool of water that a city of people uses to drink out of, if you drop, like even 1 gallon of like piss water into this supply of water, suddenly the entire thing becomes undrinkable. Even if the supply of water is huge and it's like 2,000 gallons of water, if you drop 1 gallon of piss water into into the supply, suddenly nobody wants to drink that. That would be fucking disgusting, right? And it's kind of the same thing. It's like the filler and the fluff and the noise that you add to your marketing material, it doesn't just exist on its own. It sort of like poisons the water. You know what I mean? It takes away the ability of your customer to like mentally process the good stuff, right? And so it's actively hurting your marketing when you use filler and when you talk about stuff that doesn't matter. That's the thing. Hopefully this video was useful to you. Goodbye.